Hey guys, how's it going? And like promised, I'm going to be ranking all of the Saw movies from worst to best, in my honest opinion, because with the announcement of Saw 11 and the financial success of Saw X, and a lot of people now talking about what their favorite Saw franchise movies are. I've seen a lot of videos and I wanted to make one of my own. This is all just shooting from the hip, and I will be telling you which ones are my favorite, starting with my least favorite to my most favorite. Now, I am not condemning any of these movies. I know that they're not perfect by any means, but because I am a fan of this franchise, I take every movie, no matter how much I liked it or how much I thought it fell short by Saw standards, not by Hollywood movie standards, but just by Saw standards, they still kind of hold a place in my heart, because even in my least favorite ones, I could still find moments that I appreciated. But other than that, I am definitely going to be starting this. All right, now let's get going. Okay, number 10 on the list, right? 3D, Saw 3D, or Saw the Final Chapter, right? This was an obvious one for me, just because although I liked the Chester Bennington scene, although it wrapped up a lot of different story arcs and closed a lot of loose ends that were left in the really good conclusion of Saw 6, might I add. I felt like that's just what the movie was there to do, was just to tie everything up. Now, I'm not saying I hated all of it or it was all bad, but it just seemed like a lot of the filming for it for 3D really showed. It didn't seem like the effects were very convincing. They could have made this just a normal quality film. They didn't have to 3D film it, which was, in my opinion, a very big standout. I wasn't a huge fan of it in that sense. Now the script, I still felt like, it had a little bit to it, but a lot of these characters were very forgettable. Like the Sergeant Gibson guy, he was just kind of there to be a opposition to Hoffman because Strong was killed off at the end of Saw 5. But it just kind of felt to me like everything was meant to be tied in. Now, a lot of people say they thought that Dr. Gordon was an obvious plot twist. Now, for me, he was only in the movie for about 5 minutes. So it was really hard for me to see that coming. But it did make a lot of sense that he was one of the best for the guy that's just going to close the final book, the final insurance policy that John Kramer had. But other than that, I just kind of felt like it was there just to wrap up. So that's why I'm going to give this the spot number 10. Spot number 9, I'm definitely going to have to give to Jigsaw. Now, this movie, I went to go see it when it came out just because I was like, okay, I'm always going to want to see a new installment to see what they do with it. I don't know how they're going to go. So I went into this movie with very low expectations, and I think that's why I was able to bear it. Now, if you understand Saw lore, you're going to be pretty infuriated, and that's why I basically give this, the spot number 9, because although I will say the production value was pretty good, a lot of the traps, just kind of seeing like the spiral trap in that one, I just kind of felt like it was just set up to fail. I mean, I didn't think it was totally bad, but a lot of that lore stuff, it just is like, oh, that guy was my nephew, right? You're giving yourself away, buddy. It just kind of seemed like this is the game that was supposed to take place before the others. When did it take place? I just don't know, because the fact that, that's what it was. It just didn't seem like it was anywhere consistent in the story. And then Logan being the bad guy at the end, the secret apprentice again, that apparently constructed the reverse bear trap. You're just trying to throw meaning onto some stuff that I just didn't think needed to be thrown meaning on. A lot of it seemed like a lot of throwaways. But I will be honest, once it all comes full circle and you realize why the people who are in the traps are in the traps, okay, they're keeping some of the themes consistent where Jigsaw is targeting people who he finds to be net negatives on society. So, you know what, I can't really be too mad at this one, but the lore, it just busted wide open like an egg. But other than that, let's move on to number 8. So, my spot for number 8 is definitely going to be Saw 5. Now, I thought that this movie was okay. I thought that, the five survivors getting narrowed down until they realized they were all supposed to survive every trap. Okay, I understood what you were going for. They were all part of one gigantic plot. And then you had the Strom versus Hoffman thing, which was cool. I just kind of felt the movie to be a little bit slow. I mean, there was a lot of exposition on Hoffman's backstory and how he became an apprentice of Jigsaw, how he became part of the Jigsaw clan. And you actually sympathize for the guy. But I just kind of felt like there were a lot of slow-moving parts of this movie that kind of just was like, it was kind of there. And then also, this might be just a nitpick, but like, although the end credits usually had a pretty interesting song to go with it, this is where they just stuck with the Saw themes and everything like that. But other than that, I mean, a lot of the traps were pretty interesting to me. I thought that the ending twist of Strom not trusting Jigsaw enough were there to happen. I think like that was Strom's test, and they really understood the character they wrote into the series. But it was his downfall. His hot-headedness and his aggression ended up getting him more hurt than not. But other than that, I would give that the number 8 spot. So number 7 for me would definitely be the original Saw movie. I'm going to be real. I don't think it is definitely the worst one that's ever happened. I thought it was actually pretty good. Same thing, kind of just pacing issues, and obviously this is an introduction movie, and by a standalone film, I still thought it was pretty good. It had a whole lot of stuff. A lot of it was just kind of like painting Jigsaw out to be a completely unhinged person without any exposition to his backstory. But once you understand the backstory, some of the stuff just kind of seemed a little out of question, just things I probably might have missed when researching the lore. But overall, just taking place in the bathroom, that bathroom trap, it was like the whole movie. I mean, it was okay. It wasn't the worst thing in the world. Some of the introduction traps, I understand why they didn't put too much effort into them, but just the quality doesn't match up with the rest of the movies. And I'm not trying to make it seem like it's a bad movie, because I actually still will watch it from time to time, because I appreciate the first step, because you all got to start somewhere. But once you watch the sequels, it really dims the light to the first one. But I will say I did like Adam and Dr. Gordon's interactions and stuff. I thought that they made a pretty good casting pair. And then the plot twist at the end with John Kramer being in the center of the bathroom the whole time, that was actually a really cool thing. Number 6 is going to surprise people. It's Spiral from the Book of Saw, the Chris Rock movie. Now, a lot of people give this a little bit of garbage, and I get it. When you just do a Jigsaw copycat who has an odd voice, it seems to me like, I think it got a bit of a hard time. Now, why do I put this up on the list? Yeah, they wanted an all cops kind of thing. They wanted to make this a very cliche detective movie, which, you know what? Not too bad. I still thought that it was all right. Watching Samuel L. Jackson and Chris Rock both on a screen, interacting as father and son, doing the whole Jigsaw, Book of Saw stuff, I definitely enjoyed this film. I thought that just watching Chris Rock be a fan of the franchise and then want to make his own passion project, this might not hit every note, but you can tell that effort was kind of thrown into this just to kind of try and capture the themes. I get it. A lot of the traps are double-edged swords, or in some cases they're completely easily escapable. But, I think that fits into the Jigsaw copycat thing, because it's obviously from a point of vengeance, and a guy who doesn't really understand Jigsaw, nor would he be as talented as Jigsaw, but I think he makes it work. As obvious as the reveal was, I was very understanding about the motivations and wanting to do it for what he felt was a very just cause. But I know that it missed a few notes, but when you see someone make such a fan project, right, and it actually does midway decent, and he actually does a couple things right every now and again, I gotta give a lot of credit to Chris Rock for what he did with this whole thing, because even though he was a little over the top too, and you see the comedy side of him really in there, I just think that, he did such an amazing job for what he was given. Now, it wasn't the perfect one, but I don't want to talk in circles. Spot number 6 goes to Spiral. All right, now it's time for spot number 5, and this one might surprise people for putting this one so far up the list. I'm going to have to go with Saw 4. Now, a lot of people don't like this movie. A lot of people thought that it was a little corny, cheesy, but as a Saw fan, I'm going to say that's kind of like every Saw movie, how a lot of it's just a lot of cinema in the cinema. But it was a good plot twist how it took place subsequently with Saw 3, the detective rig thing. And I actually do enjoy the reason he was tested, because sometimes the obsession to help everybody and forget yourself and what makes you happy, like the whole plot about his wife leaving to go with his mom, to go with her mom, and then saying, "Hey, come with me." If he would have come with her and enjoyed his life, he wouldn't be part of that whole debacle. It still left a lot up to chance. But I still just kind of like the whole thing about people do need to save themselves, and it really drives home why Jigsaw kind of snapped and went over the edge, is because he was part of a bunch of projects that actually tried to help people. He was very about doing the quote-unquote right thing before he became the Jigsaw killer. But I really do thought that I thought that this movie was actually all right, especially, the Hoffman reveal was a little, obvious. But I will be honest and say that, hey, man, I thought that it was a very satisfying ending. And what more? I will say that end credit scene, IV by X Japan, that was a pretty catchy song. Now, I didn't even know that song existed until I played it on Rock Band 2 in a DLC. But once that all got unleashed, I was so happy to see that. They made this one really work out, at least in my opinion. So, spot number 5. It definitely goes to Saw 4. Now, spot number 4 is I'm going to go with Saw 3. This is probably the first time they really tried to emotionally charge a Saw movie hyperly, and there is a lot of pain behind the protagonist of Jeff, right? He's a very vengeful guy just trying to get out and get the guy who got his son, and you really get to see a subplot of revenge and how it just kind of eats us up and turns us into a shell of our former selves. And that's like the thing is, I really did sympathize with Jeff Denlin on a whole scale, but then the fact that he kind of relapses and it causes the failure at the end, plus it just kind of showed that Jigsaw cared about who carried on his legacy, because he was testing Amanda the entire time, and Amanda is such an interesting character. Also, by the way, Shawnee Smith, if you're watching this, you were my celebrity crush for a long time, but the character was very emotionally unstable from a painful past, and I will be honest and say that I sympathize with why Jigsaw didn't want her to be in his position, because what would he be leaving behind in his eyes? Something that is a complete bastardization of everything that he stands for. But other than that, I got to go with Saw 3 being my number 4 spot. Spot number 3 is definitely going to go out to Saw 6. Now, why Saw 6? I think that this was probably one of my favorites, just because the whole subplot of the healthcare industry and how it objectifies the public. Overall, I just really thought that this was a really good movie. Now, it had a bit of a cliffhanger ending, and had Hoffman been killed at the end, it would have definitely been a really foregone conclusion to the Hoffman trilogy, but they had to make it a saga, which is understandable. Plus, when you have Roderick from Diary of a Wimpy Kid give out the most brutal death in the entire movie, which, with William Easton as a character, I saw his growth and his self-reflection on a really good scale. Now, I was actually very disappointed when they just chose to kill the character off at the very end, but I think it added a little bit of realism to it. But seeing John's final requests go out was just very awesome. And it really did kind of show and give this thing, like, you can't really put a price on people's lives like that. It's just not ever going to happen. So I really did enjoy this. I think this actually spoke out to the public, and it really was a pickup from Saw 5. I thought after the dull note, that was kind of Saw 5. Saw 6 really just kind of like was, hey, we're actually putting in a little bit of effort into this script. So, but even though I will give this the number 3 spot, just because traps, all that stuff. There was a lot of thought put into this, and you know what? I loved every moment of it almost. Okay, now number 2 on the list is the most recent released Saw X. And you know, like they always say, there's an A and B plot to Saw movies. They made it all one plot, and it's definitely through the mind of John Kramer. Like they actually did this through a different directorial reason where John Kramer is the main focal point. You see the world through his eyes. You feel his frustration. You feel his heartbreak. You feel what it is to, you don't just see it, but you feel it, to what makes Jigsaw Jigsaw. And you see a more human aspect to John Kramer at the end when they put an innocent kid in the trap and he wants to save the kid so much that he is willing to sacrifice himself for this kid. And you know, he finally meets people who were kind of his match and were just, or if not as sadistic as him, but not from a point of doing good, just from a point of selfishness. So when watching this movie again, I really was like, okay, they made some of the most evil people that I did not feel sorry for being in this trap, and it was the perfect fit for someone who would be put in a jigsaw trap, in my opinion. It just hit every emotional note right. The fact that Shawnee Smith still came back with her age and was still able to portray Amanda Young, it just all felt really awesome to me. And just the ending was such a satisfying note, and I was not expecting the 10th installment to be this impactful, but it just was. And the fact that Saw did so much better than 99% of movies in Hollywood today, this year alone, really did show that, hey man, they're back and they're actually putting thought into it. And I can only hope that Saw 11 is, if not just as good, maybe even better. I just hope they still keep that soul. All right, number 1 on my list is definitely going to be Saw 2. This was the perfect mix of emotion with action, and the traps were unforgettable. The needle pit, definitely one of my favorites. It kind of just showed the survival of the fittest aspect that wasn't supposed to go that way in the franchise. And I will say one thing about the twist at the end, because every Saw movie has a twist, but this was definitely the best twist out there. I thought that the fact that Amanda Young being the apprentice, just like picture you watching this movie for the first time, like only the first and second movies have come out, and you watch this, you're waiting for the third movie because you know you're thinking in the first place, John Kramer is going to be dead soon. So who else, you know, what's going to happen after he dies? We're just not going to see a John Kramer anymore. Come forward to Amanda Young being the person who's going to carry on his work. It just shows that he wants this to be an ongoing thing even after his death, that he wants a legacy built out of this, and it just kind of added a whole new depth of urgency to it. The traps, the cast, the way they interacted with each other. Donnie Wahlberg being in the movie was fantastic. I thought that he did a really good job as Detective Eric Matthews, and just to see him be tested and then fail his test at the end was just such a satisfying conclusion. But the fact that they were actually able to take a old script and fashion it into Saw 2 and then do it this well was unbelievable. I think everybody who took part in that film did the best, and you could show that they were trying to follow up hard with the first movie. But like, just honestly, the fact that they did it first, this twist was the first one, and it was definitely the best one, and it had so much weight to it at the end, definitely made this number 1 on my list. But that is my Saw favoritism list. Now, to anybody who has any objections in the comments, leave it behind. I want to know your thoughts. Did you like these Saw movies? What was your favorite? What was your least favorite ones? Put yours in a 1 to 10 list for me, and I'll be definitely down to read some of them. But that is my list of which Saw movies I like most. I will see every single last one of you on whatever next project I choose to do. Peace out.